Hi, this is Joe. I had a conversation earlier this morning, and in that discussion, a subject came up that I'm sure many of us have dealt with over the last couple of years in particular. One where we were looking to encourage someone to move along a certain path, and they weren't in alignment with it. And then another aspect of it related to dealing with an illness that also has been cropping up over the last couple of years, and essentially looking at it from the approach of one that was taken 40 or 50 years ago, maybe even more recent than that, where a child with the measles was put into a room in proximity of other children who were normally healthy so that they too could catch it and get through it and get over it, and their immune system would be all the better for it. That was the common wisdom at the time. Why we couldn't use that common wisdom and expect a similar sort of outcome this time around, I don't know. But unlike most people on network news, I don't also hold a degree in medicine or science or chemistry so that I can speak expertly on this topic, as many of them already do. They must be quite talented to speak so definitively about things without holding a degree or having studied that, and essentially only relying on information that was given to them by someone who perhaps had something to gain from it, but hey, who am I to speak of such things? So anyway, the part of our conversation that brought up a memory for me was where this individual said that their intention was to do similar to that measles example that I expressed, in a way that with agreement, they could simulate a similar kind of thing pertaining to this current illness that's been manufactured. Happened to show up out of nowhere. And they also spoke of the lesson they learned from it. And that one was, this realization came to them that, it was my intention to do this because it seemed like a good idea at the time. And yet, now looking back on it, I realize that if a person is meant to go through something, they're going to go through it. And we may have different intentions, and our intentions are essentially for what we think is in their highest interest. This still may not be something that particular individual would experience or would not experience by virtue of any involvement on our part. And I fed back to this individual something along the lines of, what you're speaking of now is from a place of wisdom, and you didn't have this perspective before, although that doesn't negate the fact that what you thought earlier wasn't something that came from a loving perspective. You're just looking at it from a different one now and recognizing that we truly all have our own journey to go through in this lifetime. And there may be some things that we can do for others. There may be some things that we can help prevent others from having to experience. And yet, there are also going to be things that we can do anything and everything in our power to prevent, for example, for another, and it will still occur if that is something that is intended for them to experience in this lifetime. The soul's journey, the soul's path, the soul's choice of experience. And to take that one step further, I said, that reminds me of the very last portion of the Ascension Reminders, where they spoke of each soul having their own journey. And I know that's not a unique thing to know, but it was something that I remember because I spoke it, I narrated it. And this was something 12 years ago, but it stayed with me. Actually, that entire message stayed with me. And what I find interesting is that we're living in a time right now where that message really and truly can help you see where you are on your own path as it relates to things we're experiencing in the world today and your response to that, your way of dealing with it, your way of being in the world today. And that's not to say that we want to go there and listen and judge ourselves based on it. No, it was just an observation that I had. And it was one that I applied to myself at the time too. Anyway, if you're curious about it, I'll leave a link to that particular video in the description box below. I'm pretty sure there's an audio-only version of it on The Light Has Won. I just don't remember which particular page it was on. I'll look for it and leave that link as well, because there's really nothing to see as you're listening. So that's pretty much the case with most of my narrations. There's nothing to see here. There's nothing to see. Yeah, if you do listen to that, remember there's a part in there where they refer to planet A and planet B. I think of it these days in terms of levels of frequency, levels of vibration, that essentially can render something invisible to something else, but both being in the same place. It's not science fiction, it's science fact. These are things that are known in the scientific community, etc. And we can use visible light as an example, where our spectrum of light that is visible to us is relatively narrow, very narrow, compared to the broad spectrum of light that we don't see. I think I used that example before from the perspective of a prism. All right. I think that's all I've got today. Thanks for listening.